Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined alongside Jonathan Barber, one of the most premier North Carolina-based managing attorneys within the franchising industry. He has represented franchising professionals in a legal setting for his entire professional career. He's prioritized innovative entrepreneurship and just a deep-rooted understanding for what it takes to be a successful franchise system or whatever facet that may entail. Mr. Barber graduated from the Liberty University College of Law in 2015, and he went on to practice as a franchise attorney for North Carolina-based Shelton and Power LLC. He has since taken on duties as a managing attorney for Franchise.Law, also based in North Carolina, and he's working for a firm that represents over 100 franchises, both domestically and internationally. So needless to say, we've got some serious legal royalty on our hands right here, and very excited to be able to show off all the cool insights that you've been able to put together. So I want to start as far as kind of a general connotation. You talk about, your law history and your education, and realistically, what is it that drew you to specialize into franchise law in particular? What is it that really drew you to the field?
Yeah, thanks. I really fell into it. I got hired right out of law school by my now law partner, Jason Power. And he had been doing exclusively franchise law for probably 8 years at that point. I was a partner at another firm, and we became great friends. Left that firm, started the current firm, Franchise.Law, and exclusively began representing franchisors in transactions and litigation. And I really fell into it as his associate and kind of learned the ropes, drafting FDDs and registrations, and then got into more of the heavy hitting stuff, exemptions, litigation, and M&A and everything. And I love it because franchise law is really, to practice it effectively, you really have to know enough of a lot of different areas of law to be dangerous, because it's a weird mix of contract, intellectual property, securities, a lot of corporate law, and everything in between. So it's cool, and I love that it's all that we do.
I can only imagine
Well,
the different
I
details.
couldn't hear you for a second. It dropped out.
No, I got you. We're safe right here. I can only imagine the different details as far as, the multifaceted approach that you truly need to take in order to stay dangerous, like you mentioned. And the different legal hurdles that can go on and the different details that can really take place within this industry. You really have to have a comprehensive approach. And that's something I did want to lead into. I kind of wanted to lean into with my next question here. As far as the different challenges that are facing the franchising industry, or perhaps as we progress into kind of a potentially post-pandemic, I realize we have to say that sensitively because we're not exactly out of the pandemic yet, but as far as where we're at this point in time, and definitely looking toward the future, what do you think some of the bigger legal hurdles or some of the bigger challenges are within the franchising industry?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. On one hand, honestly, when the pandemic first came on, we thought we were going to see this major slow in things in the franchising world, less people buying franchises, more franchisees having to close up shop, and we did see some of the latter, but for the most part, our clients just kept chugging along, selling a ton of franchises, and unfortunately, you're seeing a lot of people who they got laid off from their 9 to 5. They bought a franchise, and now that the world is kind of getting back to normal, they're like, okay, why did I do that? And you're seeing some people that maybe weren't the best franchisees, or they're not the best fit for a franchise system, and now they're trying to find their way out and demanding things. And it just causes some friction versus someone who, in a more normal time, well thought out, bought a franchise and is kind of set there for a while. So I think we're going to see some franchisee relationship management issues. On the flip side, there were a lot of franchisors making a lot of changes to their systems during that time, and the magical word pivoting during the entire pandemic. Everyone wanted to pivot this way, that way, and making all these changes. And I think that resulted in a lot of these registration states where you have attorneys on staff and other state examiners reviewing filings. They've been stricter for sure. So I think a lot of younger franchisors are going to see issues with the registration process, and they have to make sure their documents are tight, especially when it comes to things like Item 19, financial performance representations, and other things like that. They got to make sure that they're going into any state filing confidently. So those are, I guess, two major things that I kind of see going on right now and for a little bit into the future.
You heard it here first. You got to track down my guy, Mr. Barber, to make sure all of these policies are being met, especially if they're getting a little bit more strict right here. All the more reason to pursue a legal professional in this kind of setting. And I mean, that this is a perfect lead in as far as, you mentioned the different pivoting or the different details that people have really had to transition because of the pandemic itself. It can definitely lead to kind of some unforeseen mistakes that might be putting together. But there can also be kind of just time old mistakes that somebody without necessarily the experience within franchising like yourself, if somebody doesn't have that developed insight, I can only imagine it can be pretty easy to potentially put together recurring mistakes. And you've probably had, I can only imagine, a front row seat to plenty of those details, which is why a lot of people want to contact you for your
A little
service.
closer than I'd want to be. Yeah. Yeah.
You get to be the guy that gets to save the day. There you go. Anyways, I did want to touch as far as some of the more common mistakes that you might have noticed from a legal setting. Where do you feel like some people can definitely improve, or where is it that you really help out people and you're able to really capitalize on your own insights in the franchising industry for those people?
Yeah, I think I bring a fresh perspective to a lot of age old franchising terms. When you're looking through a franchise offering and you see certain things like the renewal fee, where someone buys a franchise, pays a franchise fee, and let's say 10 years down the road they're going to renew for another 5 or 10 years, they'll have to pay a renewal fee. Franchisors historically have just charged a flat fee of $5,000, $10,000 to renew, and usually the franchisor has some costs, but it's not meant to be a profit center for them, because they're essentially getting another 5 years of royalty stream revenue as a profit center. But recently, I've seen a lot of these franchisors who their renewal fee will be 50% of the then current franchise fee, and honestly, I think they're just getting a little greedy. Or the attorney who drafted it just thought, he was slipping something in there and getting a win. I think that's stupid. I think that franchisees, prospective franchisees, when they're reviewing these documents, see stuff like that and they're like, nah, no, I'm not just gonna, pay you another $30,000, $40,000 10 years down the road so I can keep paying you royalties for another 10 years. That's dumb. So I also encounter that a lot, where my franchisor clients are getting these negotiation points from brilliant franchisee attorneys who point these things out. And so I end up proactively making a lot of those changes with my clients and with their documents, so that it's just better from a business perspective. So you have the legal side of franchising and the business side of franchising. They have to mesh well together. And I think that you can take two of the same exact franchise businesses, say two roofing companies, and they're on an equal playing field, but you can draft one FDD better than the other from a sales perspective. So I guess that's what I've been seeing a lot of, where FDDs they got to come into 2021.
I can only imagine the amount of money that you have saved your clients over the years with this kind of understanding right there. And that's definitely something. I mean, it's incredible to recognize, especially as the field continues to evolve, and to recognize that some people might even try to be deceiving as far as putting those documents together. And that definitely increases the importance of having somebody with a very trusted legal background to be able to go about this. And I can only imagine, too, that's probably a pretty gratifying thing for your own duties, to recognize that you're really looking out for people. And I certainly think that's something that you probably love about the industry itself. But I mean, in more of a general sense, what do you really love about working with franchises or working just within the franchising industry?
Yeah, franchising is cool because for the most part, everyone is growing. It's they're just growing businesses. I never wanted to practice like bankruptcy law, where it's like nothing is going well. We're on the border of having to close. What do we do? We get protection from the courts so our creditors don't come after us. And nothing about that interests me at all. No offense to like bankruptcy attorneys, they are very needed in the world. But I like the exciting growth, the entrepreneurial mindset of my clients. I just think that it's real cool when, at the end of the year, we get to celebrate. They open 50 new locations or 100 new locations. And their annual conference is 3 times bigger than it was the previous year. And it's just real cool to see a lot of franchisors who are very terribly entrepreneurial, and they are also passing on the ability to be that entrepreneurial to other franchisees. And you can instantly recognize, as a franchise attorney, when you're talking to someone that wants to franchise their business, you can almost instantly recognize what their motives are. If they just want to build something up, flip it, sell it to private equity, yeah, okay. But if they're there because they actually want other people to experience business ownership, that's really cool. And for me, as a millennial going through recessions and no one can get a job after college and everything, I like to see that. I can put my weight and my legal background behind something like that.
That is just an uplifting attitude to have for it. And man, I can only imagine how gratifying it is to be able to uplift others in that entire process. And I mean, it's certainly, I mean, all the education duties within your own personal background, as much as the rigorous as it is to even become an accredited person to practice law, I can certainly see how that's something that, a very rich history of your own background, that can be a pretty gratifying experience. And that's something to feel pretty good about. So anyways, one last thing that I do want to touch on as far as the advice that you would give for other people, and definitely the insights that you've put together as far as motivating people to maintain an uplifting business practice, or motivating people to just have a comprehensive understanding towards what they're getting themselves into. Is there something that you feel a lot of people should know? I mean, you mentioned certainly the disclosure documents, making sure you have an awareness for it, making sure you're getting involved for the right motives. But as far as your own, from an advice standpoint, what do you feel like prospective franchisees should know before getting involved in a business?
Yeah, 2 big tips for, well, I guess one for prospective franchisees and one for the franchisors selling them a franchise. For the prospective franchisees, yes, the franchise agreement, the FDD, it is 99% tilted in favor of the franchisor, because who drafted it? The franchisor's attorney, who works for them and has a duty to look out for their best interests, right? The franchisee's attorney didn't come in and draft a franchise agreement. So logically, that's why it looks like that. But there's a lot of reasons for why a lot of those scary terms are there. For instance, a lot of people buying franchises get real turned off that they have to sign a personal guarantee. And what they don't understand is, if they did not sign a personal guarantee, the brand would pretty much be worthless. So if you formed an LLC and bought a McDonald's franchise and did not have to sign a personal guarantee, you could learn everything there is to know about running a McDonald's and making lots of money with it. And then 3 years in, you could just rebrand everything, walk away, create, McJonathan's Burgers or something like that. And there's nothing that McDonald's could really do to stop you, because you are not personally bound by the terms of the franchise agreement. So there's always a reason for those terms in the franchise agreement that look really one-sided. And I think it really takes a smart franchisee to understand that a lot of those terms ultimately come back around to protect their investment in that franchise. So they should keep that in mind before trying to totally attack the agreement and negotiate 50,000 changes to it. For the franchisors selling franchises out there, you're getting into a relationship for 10, 15, 20 years. You will be in pretty much a marriage with these franchisees. You are just as obligated to them as they are to you. They have to pay you royalties every week, every month. They have to follow your system. You have to provide them with support. And if they are not making money using your system, I would really re-examine your product offering or your service offering. So that's my advice to both sides of the table.
We have an absolute legend on our hands right here, providing a comprehensive look at the entire franchising industry. Mr. Barber, we are overjoyed that you were able to join us today. We are thrilled to name you as one of the top franchise legal players throughout the entire country. Thanks for making it happen and keep doing big things out there.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It was
Yes,
great.
sir.